So my name is Chris and I own this GR Yaris. I've owned the car since about June last year. First modifications on the car. Technically, I think I modified it before I even got it because I already had a parts sitting in the house. Sorry, Lindsay. Parts sitting in the house. There was exhaust, there was bits planned, like to get the roof wrap taken off as well. So I had everything planned before I even got the car. And then the day I got it back was the first day I got the Miltech exhaust fitted to it, which obviously it's long gone now because things move that quickly. But yeah, day one, it's back at the house and modified already. I went for the GR Yaris because I think it's the last chance to get a proper homologation special car because I don't think anyone else is going to bother making it now. From what I gather with Toyota's R&D, they've never made the WRC car. The new one's a space frame chassis, so even though it looks similar, it's not based on the car either. So this was an opportunity to get probably the last kind of internal combustion engine rally car for the road. I couldn't pass up that opportunity, especially whilst I had the opportunity to do it now. Inspiration for modifications, I'll be honest, I don't know what I'm doing. It's kind of snowballed. I had an idea in mind when I first got it of just the usual kind of rally flaps and that kind of thing, maybe a couple of stickers. The way the car's progressed though, I'm quite impulsive. So stuff comes to mind and I think, let's try it. And I started to make a couple of parts for myself and made myself my own intake and the mirrors and things in the car. And from there, I learned how to 3D print, I learned how to 3D model, and then I started to do renders in Blender of the car, like different designs, different liveries, that kind of thing. So it's just been an ever-evolving thing. Every time an obstacle comes up, I've tried to navigate it as best I can. Like about a month and a half ago, I smashed the front bumper on the car, going around Glasgow and hit a pothole and a speed bump at the same time and just completely obliterated it. And because of the wait for getting the new bumper in, and obviously with the likes of Japfest coming up and show season starting too, I started to look at the Tom's bumper instead. So that was never planned, but because of the way things worked out, I needed a bumper, and I just happened to find out there was one in stock in Tedgeware as well. It's only recently like Japanese cars have really turned my head. I didn't own a Japanese car until, in fact, I think this is my first Japanese car I've ever actually owned. I had my i30N before this, but obviously that's Korean. So it's only recently I've got into the kind of Japanese car scene. So the Cherry Blossom was, again, I've just said I'm impulsive and I just do stuff because I feel like doing it. There's a company called Spinnywoosh on Instagram. I followed them for a while. They do some mad liveries, like they've got the Great Wave of Koenigawa, they've got the Oni masks, and they've got the Cherry Blossoms too. And I saw them, and at the time I thought that's a cool look. I mean, back then I was at Japfest last year and the car was wrapped purple, so it was completely different again to what it is now. Airbags are another impulse thing. I was at a show called Cleanfest up in Scotland last year, and I was speaking to the guys at Offset Auto House, and they started to kind of make noises about stuff, and we were interested. But at the time, there was no air ride kits available, kind of off the shelf, not readily available anyway. A lot of people go down the road of like Airlift VP and Airlift Struts and Ellen and Vair, but there was nothing off the shelf. So we could do, at the time it was on BC coilovers, so I could do a bags conversion on the coilovers for the fronts, but the rears, there was no option off the shelf to fit the car. So then it was a case of, do we spend God knows how much time fabricating plates and platforms and using universal bags, or how do we get around fixing the rear? So I thought about it for a while, and I spoke to Ricky at Luxury Auto House up in Inverness, and they had a set of D2 suspension, which they could drop ship from D2 for us. As far as you're aware, it's the first set they'd ever sold, so I mean, at the minute I'm laying claim to the world's first. I don't know if it is, but if somebody wants to prove me wrong, then fine. But this D2 air suspension with a end-shifted management, which I ended up installing myself in my driveway. And I love it. It's the first car on air ride that I've done as well. And I don't know, it's like, I like having the looks, but the practicality too. Like, I like being able to get up and go over speed bumps and then still be able to drive it. And it drives like if it was on springs or coilovers, like it still drives really well. So I'm delighted with it. But again, it was an impulse thing. I never thought I'd ever bag a car, and then I have done, and now I'm going to bag every car that I do from now on, so that's changed too. People say I've ruined the car quite a lot, and it's become a running joke now, honestly. I mean, maybe 10 years ago I would have taken it personally, but see now, I'm in my 30s and it's my car, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, if somebody wants to have a genuine discussion, I'll tell them what the car's like to drive, but it's like being on coilovers. You've got adjustable spring weights, you've got adjustable dampening, and it drives really well. But people still think back to an age, I think, where air ride was quite rudimentary. It wasn't sophisticated in the slightest. It was maybe quite pillowy too. But now, I mean, we spoke earlier about Steve Fraser's R8. I saw that on track at Knock Hill on air ride. And that's when my mind started to change and think, well, maybe it is possible to still have a good ride on air. So I did my research into it, and like I said, I'm happy with the ride on it. A lot of people wouldn't be. a lot of people disagree with doing it. They talk about purity of the car too, but to be honest, there's plenty of GR Yarises out there that are being kept standard, and for good reason. There'll be like garage queens out there that be kept immaculate for years, and that's great, but I want to drive a car and I want to enjoy a car, and that's exactly what I've done with it. And if somebody wants to say I've ruined it, that's fine, but it doesn't really bother me. I'm still happy. Future plans for the car. There's a turbo Centrum truck out there, which is worrying. I need to have a chat with them this weekend. The car's going in for development work next week with Flat Out Performance. It's a garage in Airdrie. They're going to work with us to develop some tunes for the GR. The ECU's just been cracked recently, so before it was tuning boxes, which again, I've had a tuning box for a while. It's great, it did give more power, but I wanted a car that drove more like stock. It's quite boosty and quite peaky as it is. So when I heard that the ECU had been cracked, Flat Out reached out to us and asked if I wanted to work with them on fitting some parts and getting some tuning work done too. They've got a proper like pressure and temperature controlled hub dyno and everything, so it'd be a good place to get the car set up. So the car's going in with them on Monday, which I don't know when this is going to be shown, but the day after Japfest, back up to Glasgow, into Airdrie. I've done most of the work myself. It's getting to the point now, I've reached the limitations of what I can do. Obviously mechanical stuff like spanners and bolts, that kind of thing, I've done for myself for what, 15 years or something, so I'm more than happy to take on almost anything. Air ride, it was the first time I'd done anything like that, but again, it's been installed, it works fine, there's no air leaks, so I'm happy enough with that. Now we're at the stage of actually need to get into ECU tuning. That's obviously specialist stuff, which I can't do, so that's why the guys at Flat Out are going to take over from there. Anything else cosmetic, again, I can paint stuff myself, but if I wanted it done properly, I'd put it into a garage, I think, and get it painted properly. But most stuff I would want to do myself, to be honest. I try and do as much as I can myself because I get a feeling of accomplishment out of it. When I can look back at something and think that's kind of my work, it feels good, and I want to keep on doing that as much as I can. Same with the carbon fibre stuff. I've been making, obviously I made the intake, shifter knobs, mirror caps. Guys on the GR Yaris forums, they'll know me as well for a while because I've been making bits for them too. So I do like to get stuck in and do stuff as much as I can, but obviously talking about the ECU, there's some limitations to that, and that's why I'll take over somewhere else. I still remember being maybe 12, 13 years old, growing up with, obviously down in Blackpool, my family. I had an annual that had like the top supercars of all time. It's one of the first books I remember about cars, and there's a picture in it of a Dodge Viper, a GTSR blue one with the white stripes down it. And I don't know what it is, that's like my first memory of cars, that and a touring car race at Alton Park. The thing I love about the scene the most is the camaraderie. Like there's guys, see when you get a good group of mates and a good wee group going on, there's guys that have got your back. And there's been, I mean, I'm in a fortunate position now where I'm older and wiser and I'm the one that's helping people out more now, but I remember being in my early 20s and going to car shows by myself, and you'd break down or you wouldn't know what to do or where to go. And it was difficult to break into it, but then when you start to get a good group of people together, and you start to meet these people and they become regulars, and every year or year after year you start seeing more stuff, there's genuine friendships that get formed through it. I know there's obviously, people talk about the toxicity of the car scene sometimes and people can be quite judgy, but when you move past that, there's some genuine deep relationships that you form with people that it extends beyond the car life. Then you're talking about people coming to your wedding or they're helping you out around the house and things too, and before you know it, they're just a mate. They're not a car person, they're just a genuine good friend. I think that's, say, the friendships I've made through this, I think is probably what I value most out of it.